Hi, welcome to our second episode of what I'm calling science literacy. And I know it's been a while since I last had an episode, my first episode, um, but I moved. I moved from Virginia to Michigan, and that's a big undertaking. And so I've been incredibly busy, but it's also given me a lot of time to think about what I wanted to do next, where I wanted to take this. And it also gave me time to think or to finish a book I started by David Quammen called Spillover, all about zoonotic diseases, which is perfect because we are dealing with a zoonotic disease pandemic right now. Now, his book was published in 2013, so long before SARS-CoV-2 or coronavirus or COVID-19, as it's also known, better known. But it's full of incredible information and details that had I read it last year or had I listened to it, because I did listen to the audiobook, very big book, um, lots of information in there. I can't recommend it enough. It was fantastic. But had I read it last year, I probably wouldn't have made it quite the impact that it had this time around or this year, because obviously we're living in the middle of a zoonotic disease pandemic, as I just mentioned. Now, zoonotic disease means a disease that moves from an animal to a human. SARS-CoV-2 is a zoonotic disease, along with things like Ebola, SARS-CoV-1, or better known as just SARS, the flu, um, Marburg syndrome, did not, or Marburg virus, sorry, did not know about that one. That one seems pretty rough. HIV/AIDS, also zoonotic. Um, Lots of different zoonotic diseases. The list goes rabies. The list goes on and on and on. So learning about zoonotic diseases has given me a way of looking at the current pandemic in a different light. Again, I want to stress I'm not an expert. I feel it's necessary to say that at the beginning of each video. Again, this is only my second one, but still, I want to make it clear I'm not pretending to be an expert. I have a degree in science. It's in geology, but being a science teacher, while that does not make me an expert, not only in things like virology or microbiology or epidemiology or any of that, it doesn't make me an expert even in science. But I do feel that I have a good understanding of how science works. And so I want to help as many people as possible understand what's going on. And so I do have a few people, former students or others, that kind of, I don't want to say depend on me or rely on me, but look to me for some sort of clarification when things scientific pop up. So here we go. Um, SARS-CoV-2, that is the official name of what we're dealing with, the coronavirus. And the spillover book taught me so much, or at least opened my eyes to so much of what's going on out there, specifically what came before. Um, Back in the early 2000s, there was a pandemic, SARS, sudden acute respiratory syndrome, SARS, um, better also known as SARS-CoV, now known as SARS-CoV-1, because it is a coronavirus. That surprised a lot of people because coronaviruses were known to scientists, but they're fairly benign in the sense that we get them almost every year. Um, there's a small grouping of coronaviruses that make up what we call the common cold. So when you get sick with the cold is not a specific disease. It is actually a kind of a catch-all for a large number of various viruses, some of which are rhinoviruses. Actually, most of them are rhinoviruses, which actually means nose. Rhino means nose. And some of them are coronaviruses. In fact, about a third of them, I think, are coronaviruses. So we get coronaviruses. It's not new for us to get a coronavirus, but it was new that a coronavirus was so deadly or infectious. Um, SARS came out of nowhere, it seemed, caught everybody off guard. In fact, when they discovered it was a coronavirus, there were scientists who didn't even believe that it was, in fact, a coronavirus because we knew about coronaviruses and they didn't kill people. This one did, but that's what it is. That's what it was, and that's what it is. And this one is as well a coronavirus. Um, Again, it's SARS-CoV-2, meaning it's a second iteration of the SARS-CoV or SARS coronavirus, and it's it's pretty bad. It's not as deadly as SARS, but it actually infects more people because it doesn't kill people as fast. Um, Viruses, there's a nice, I say nice, there's a balance um, between a virus's ability to infect and a virus's ability to kill. If it kills faster than it can infect, it's not going to go anywhere. If it infects faster than it kills, or at least if it infects but doesn't kill, then it's going to actually spread and have a very productive life. Um, we actually have a lot of viruses in our DNA. Apparently, I learned that from Neil Shubin's book, Some Assembly Required. Uh, we got a lot of viruses in us. They don't kill us because they've adapted and we've adapted to them, but they're there. I think he said he can't. The figure was about 10%. Is it 10? Something like that. 10% of our genetic code is virus, or at least originated as a virus, which is a ridiculously large amount. Given that we're separated from chimps by only 2% of our DNA, 10% is a huge number. Anyway, the coronavirus situation, the book Spillover really opened my eyes to where these things come from and just how kind of out of our control they are. We like to be in control of things, and these things are not in our control by any stretch of the imagination. Um, and just how many come from bats, including this one. So that's kind of the topic of this episode. I know, 7-minute introduction, but uh, that is what it is. I tend to ramble. I get a thought in my head, and then a tangent pops up, and off I go. But yes, we're going to be looking at the bat origin of the coronavirus, and the reason I want to focus on that is because there's been a lot of talk, both or negative talk, usually xenophobic talk about the coronavirus and its origins in China. Usually something to do like a meme or a joke or just a statement saying, that guy shouldn't have eaten a bat, or the China bat, or things like that. Look, people eat bats. It's not new. It's not going to stop. It's not something that just happened. People eat bats. This is something that came from the book Spillover that I really didn't know. Um, Almost 25% of the total species numbers. Now, that species number, humans are a species. We are 7.9 million, or sorry, 7.9 billion strong, but we're one single species, for what that's worth. Uh, but total number of species of the mammals, almost 25%, almost a full quarter of the total number of species in the mammals are bats. That's ridiculous. I did not know that. Bats are so numerous. There's so many different types of bats. They're so diversified. Some are insectivorous, meaning they eat only insects. Some eat fruit. Some kind of do both. Some drink blood. The vampire bats. There's so many different types of bats. Some are really big. Some are incredibly small. Just all sorts of different types, which makes them incredibly diverse and also susceptible to different ecological systems. Um, and one of those ecological systems they're susceptible to is the virus ecological system. Bats are full of viruses. Rabies is a virus. Bats have it. There's a virus in Australia called Hendra, or at least it originated or kind of popped up in Australia, called Hendra. It affects humans. Bats have it. Now, bats do not infect humans. Bats infect horses that then infect humans. Seems to be a fairly, I don't want to say common, but not uncommon situation with these viruses. And bats live with these viruses. They don't hurt the bat, generally speaking, but they also don't directly spread to humans. Some do. Ebola is one, Marburg is one, um, rabies is another. But things like the coronavirus and the Hendra virus, among a few others, don't seem to actually infect humans directly. They need another animal, an amplifier species, to basically boost its infectiousness, and then that gets into humans, and then it spreads that way. That seems to be what happened with the first SARS virus. Bats had it. People eat bats. People were not getting sick. But due to the demand for wild exotic animals, bats were being held in these markets in China known as wet markets, which have come under incredible scrutiny lately, as well they should. These markets housed live animals in cages, often, you know, right on top of each other, literally and figuratively. Animals that never would have encountered each other in the wild or in just natural setting, and here they are right on top of each other, and they're passing various pathogens, be it bacteria or viral, and that seems to be what happened in this case. The SARS coronavirus went from a bat to something called a palm civet, which is another mammal, a little four-footed kind of cat-like mammal. And from there, which was considered a delicacy or at least a widely sought after organism on menus there in various parts of China, um, that's how it spread to humans. At least that's how it seems to have spread to humans. Now, it wasn't the wild civets either. It's the farm-raised civets that were again kept in these captive cages with bats and other organisms, and it just spread. It spread through urine. It spread through feces. It spread through saliva. It spread through droplets in the air, some way or another, and it infected the civet. And inside the civet's body, it just got a power boost, if you will. It got, it's like on steroids or something. It exploded, and then it spread from them to humans. That seems to be the case here with this particular coronavirus we're dealing with now, SARS-CoV-2, or again, COVID-19. Um, we don't know, or at least I personally am not familiar with the exact amplifier species. I've heard a few things thrown out there. Pigs were one, um, pangolins were another, um, possibly the civet again. Some animal served as the amplifier host to boost the infectiousness of this particular virus, and then it spread to humans. And from there, it spreads on droplets. Suspended droplets of water in the air. So when you cough or sneeze or just breathe or speak or anything of that nature, the air, the humidity, the water vapor leaving your body carries with it this little teeny tiny virus, and that's how it infects other people that are exposed to that. So the bat is to blame, but it's not to blame. Bats carry lots of viruses, lots of bats out there. It's one of those things that seems to be almost inevitable. You can't kill all the bats. One, we need bats. Bats eat tons of insects every night. They keep the insect populations in control. Fruit bats pollinate and maintain fruit populations like way better than humans can, honestly. And they're very, very effective at what they do. And there's so many of them. There's just no way we're going to be able to call them or just eliminate them. Plus, again, extermination is not the answer, because if not the bats, then something else will be the answer or will be the reason. For instance, there was another virus in China, Nipah virus, related to Japanese encephalitis, apparently, which is a brain disease. Uh, it spread from bats to pigs. And once they realized that pigs were the carriers, if you will, they culled pigs in this one particular area of Malaysia. I think it was Malaysia, and I mean, millions of pigs, and that's all fine. But what do you do? Or no, it wasn't Malaysia. It was Sri Lanka, I think. Anyway, what do you do next? What if it's not pig, or what if it moves from pigs to something else? You know, you can't just keep killing all the animals. So one, we have to realize, okay, we have these viruses out there, and this is where science literacy comes into play. Understanding that these viruses are out there, understanding that it's not a one particular animal is spreading this virus, that it's a conditional thing. We It's conditional on us, where we are, how we act, how we interact with nature. For instance, there's 7.9 billion people on the planet. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of places for people to be. That's a lot of mouths to feed. So yeah, people are going to eat things. Again, bats are going to be on the menu, but bats aren't always spreading the virus directly from them to humans. Some cases, again, this is one of them, it requires an amplifier species. So keeping our domesticated animals, such as horses, pigs, sheep, goats, cows, away from areas where bats may roost, that's one possibility to help eliminate some of these things. But another possibility, or another way to do it, is just to realize, okay, these viruses are out there. They're going to spread from animals to us. We need to be prepared to deal with these things. And we're not. We're not. We're getting better, but we're not. Honestly, we're just not. Um, in the early 2000s, when SARS first broke out, again, as I mentioned, the coronavirus was not thought to be deadly, but here it is. It's deadly. Um, they didn't even believe it was a coronavirus at first. They thought it was a flu virus. Thought it was another type of flu, like bird flu or avian flu, because that too was also kind of breaking out in certain areas, a bird flu, and scientists have been very, very concerned about the possibility of a bird flu infecting large numbers of people. It has not spread from human to human, or at least not aerosolized yet, but that is a big worry because it is incredibly infectious and incredibly deadly. They thought that was going to be the next pandemic. So in the early 2000s, when SARS came about, they thought it was the flu. So they were treating for the flu, and the first symptoms are flu-like. People were getting headaches and lethargic and kind of running a fever. And so they were being treated for flu, but it wasn't the flu. And then it exploded and turned into this huge thing, and it spread all over the world because people thought, oh, it's just the flu. I can handle the flu. You couldn't handle this. It was deadly, very deadly. Um, and luckily, not many people were infected and not many people died, at least not as many as could have happened. If the numbers were similar to what we're dealing with now, we're talking hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of people would be dead because it was brutal. This version or iteration or mutation or whatever you want to call it, SARS-CoV-2, is not as deadly. It's deadlier than the flu, that is true, but it's not as deadly as the first SARS, which is good. Good for us and good for the virus because it gets to infect more people. It gets to infect more bodies. It gets to live more, um, and reproduce in greater numbers. Um, but the first SARS caught us off guard. This SARS shouldn't have necessarily. We've been doing research on coronaviruses ever since SARS-CoV, the first one. I'm not saying we created this one. We didn't. That's been proven over and over and over again. I'm not going to beat that dead horse, but it 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 mutated, and it's not as deadly, which is good. Um, but it got out, and this is where part of the problem. And again, science literacy becomes a huge factor. I'm not saying that the Chinese authorities are science illiterate, but they were more worried about the public perception of them and the communist regime. I'm not saying that I'm not going to go and play politics here and go, let's do away with all communism and all that. That's a whole different ball game and has nothing to do with what I'm talking about here. However, we do know that they instituted a program of control of information. They prevented the knowledge of this virus from getting out, but they didn't stop the virus from getting out. So the virus spread, but the information about it didn't, which hamstrung everybody around the world and caught everybody off guard about this. When the first SARS broke out, the most of the cases happened, even though it originated in China, in Hong Kong. Hong Kong is part of China, technically, yes, but because it was part of British rule for so long, almost 100 years, it's a little bit more open. And so they were able to tell other people, other countries, other places, hey, this is what we're dealing with. We need A, help, and B, be on the lookout for this stuff. China didn't do this time around. And again, I'm not going to place the blame on China per se. There's a lot of people to blame at this, and nobody. It's weird because I don't want to point fingers at any one particular person because it's not any one particular person's fault. Yes, somebody ate an animal. So what? I eat animals all the time. I eat chicken. I eat cows. I eat pigs. You know, I eat meat. Lots of other people around the world do too. But this person ate something that mutated this virus and created this pandemic. That person's not necessarily to blame. The blame goes on our inability to respond promptly. That falls on world leaders. World leaders, even if they are not a medical doctor, even if they're not scientists, they need to listen to the experts they have and the scientists they have and employ to find out what's going on. Public perception, throw it out the window. We're not dealing with public perception. We're dealing with public death, sick people, dead people. That's worse than anything else. So, yeah, you have a virus. Yeah, it's getting out. Ask for help. Unfortunately, the Chinese authorities did it. It got out. And now here we are. So, yeah, we can turn and point the finger at them and say they should have done this, they should have done that. That's all moot now because they didn't, and we're here in the situation we're in. So, what can we do about it? One, first and foremost, every single one of us can do this, and I harped on it on the first video. Wear a mask. Simple. Wear a mask. When you're out and about, when you're dealing with other people, wear a mask, please. No, a mask is not going to 100% protect you, but not having a mask definitely doesn't protect you at all. So wearing a mask will protect you. And it will protect others. That's number one. That's actually the key behind it is protecting others. Because if you're infected, whether you know it or not, and you cough or you speak or whatever, water droplets are leaving your mouth, you could spread it to others. But if you have a mask over your mouth, it's going to stop it. It will stop it way faster and way more effectively than anything else right now. So wear a mask. If everybody's wearing a mask, then hey, guess what? We stop the spread, or at least we slow it down. Pretending like it's not happening, pretending like it's not a big deal, pretending like it's going to be over, wanting it to be over, is not actually going to solve anything. It's still here, okay? Warm weather. We were told warm weather is going to end us. That didn't happen. And I knew it wasn't going to happen either because when all this was going down in beginning of March, I was telling this to my students and I was showing them the map and I said, look, we know that warm weather won't end this. I can tell you right now. How do I know? Australia. It's still summertime in Australia at the beginning of March. They have cases. Equatorial Africa and South America and tropical regions around the world, they have cases. It's always hot there. So, no, heat was not going to end us. It's not a seasonal flu. It's not the flu. It's SARS-CoV-2. It's COVID-19. It is different. And that's critically important here. There are different viruses out there. There are different illnesses. Just because you live through one doesn't mean that you're automatically going to be perfectly set up for everything else that comes about. You're not. Our bodies don't work that way. Some people are lucky, some aren't. You don't know which one you are. So take the precautions that the experts, and there are experts, whether they know everything there is to know about this particular thing or not, they are still experts. Take their advice, wear a mask, distance yourself socially, and just learn, just accept scientific information. Be open to the information that's out there, whether you like it or not, just to keep these mistakes at a minimum. Because one, if they make a mistake, chances are likely they're going to die. So they don't want to kill themselves. They want to keep doing what they do. So I don't know what the next episode's going to be about. Possibly more about the coronavirus. Depends on what I come across, depends on what I learn. But please, people, wear a mask, social distance, listen to the experts, leave your politics, your ideologies at home when it comes to this virus because it's not going to help you. Focus on what science says. And again, just be science literate. And if you don't know, ask. There are plenty of people out there who do. All right. Thank you very much.